Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. So today we're going to be painting Boat on a Beach, and I'm going to be sipping a little pink Moscato. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. Alright, so the materials that we're using today is a 16 by 20 stretched prime canvas. You can get this at any of your local craft stores or online. You can certainly switch up the size, but I'm going to be using the 16 by 20. You're going to need a cup of water for washing your brushes. You'll need a paper towel for drying your brushes. And the two brushes that I'm going to be using today is a 1-inch wide bristle brush, and I'm using a number 6 round brush. I'm using acrylic paints. The colors I'm using are titanium white, ultramarine blue, phthalo green, chrome yellow, Mars black, and burnt umber. And of course, as always, you can switch up those colors as well, but those are the exact ones that I'll be using. And that's all the materials that you'll need for today. All right, so the first step that we're going to be doing is the sky. It's going to come about halfway down your canvas. I'm going to be using the bristle brush, the 1-inch wide bristle brush, and I will be using phthalo green, blue, brown, and white. I'm going to start at the top of the sky, and I'm going to be going pretty dark at the top, and then I'm going to fade it down into a lighter color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with brown and blue on my brush at the same time. I'm going to be using a left to right brush stroke, and I like to paint the edges or the sides of my canvas as I go, so you'll see that I just kind of wrap my arm around the canvas. And again, I'm starting kind of on the darker side with the blue and the brown, so that way my sky is going to have a little bit of drama to it. And again, I'm just going left to right. As I come down the sky, I'm going to maybe touch my brush a little bit into the green, some blue, some brown, still with a pretty dark color going on in through here. I will be adding the white really soon to it because I do want to soften it up a little bit. Sometimes when you use these bristle brushes, you get a lot of real prominent brush strokes, or I like to refer to them as scratch marks from these bristle brushes. So by adding the white, that really softens up the look of it for you. So right now I'm starting to use a little bit of white. As you can tell, it's getting a little bit lighter and lighter. And I do want it to still remain kind of dark because I want this, again, this sky to have some good drama to it. I'm going to be adding clouds on top of it later, so I want to make sure you can really see those clouds on top of it. And you can see I keep going back up. This is just to continually soften that sky as the paint is drying. I just picked up a good amount of white on my brush, and I did not wash my brush throughout this process, throughout this sky, because I want these colors to look like they're naturally kind of blending together here. I just picked up some of the blue and the phthalo green. So I'm, again, just kind of getting my sky to come lighter as it comes down, but every now and again I'm adding that pop of color into it. And again, I'm going to want to bring my sky about halfway down my canvas. So at any time you could, like I just did, just mark your canvas to prevent you from going farther down than you want to. And then just kind of finishing up here, I do want to make sure that I get the entire sky painted. Even though we're going to be doing clouds on top of it later, I do want the, oops, almost fell on me. I do want the entire area to have at least one coat of paint on it. That way when I go to do the clouds later, I'm not worried about filling in any gaps. And then before I call it and say that I'm all set with this sky, I'm going to just kind of one last time go over lightly the entire sky, get this to really blend in nicely together. And then when I feel like I'm all done, which I'm almost done, I want to just get a little bit more darkness up here in the sky, or in the top of it. Once I feel like I'm all set with it, I will be using this same brush for the next step. So I'm going to wash it and dry it in preparation for the next step. And I'm also going to have a sip of wine in preparation for the next step. So wash and dry your bristle brush and we'll see you in a minute. Okay, so for the next step, we're going to be using your bristle brush. We're going to be painting the first layer of the water. And the colors that we're going to be using are black, blue, green, and white. And I'm going to be using them in that order. So the way that I'm going to start this is I'm going to be using black paint with my bristle brush. These brushes tend to have a mind of their own, so to keep it in control, what I'm doing is I'm squishing it on the side of my palette in my paint, and that brings my bristles under control for me. And what I'm going to do is I like to, when I'm doing a semi-straight horizon line like this, I'm not using a ruler, so I'm just doing it freehand. What I like to do is I'm going to do 2 dots. They both have to be within your sky. So I'm going to kind of visually see where my high spot is, and that's going to be right about here. And then I need to put it kind of at the same spot on the other side. So in order to figure out where that is, I use my brush as a ruler. So I'm going to hold it up to that, and then I'm going to say, oh, well, it's about that much more vacant at the top. So if I do that much more, I'm somewhere in this vicinity here. So I'm going to make myself another dot. And this is just a ballpark. We're going to be doing a little island over here, so it doesn't have to be perfect. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect them kind of quickly. I like to keep my eye on the prize. So the eye on the prize is the other dot. So for me, I'm going to start over on this right-hand side, and I'm just going to kind of push my brush into my canvas. I'm constantly checking where this dot is over here, and that guides me in kind of like the lights on the tarmac at the airport. I'm being guided in by this other dot here, and that gives me a pretty straight line. If you need to do a little bit of adjusting, you can certainly come back in and adjust it a little bit more, but that's pretty good for me visually. It looks kind of straight on both ends, so I'm not really going to tweak it much more than that. And then what I'm going to do, I want my water to get lighter and lighter as it comes down. So if your brush is overloaded with black at this point, just wipe it on your paper towel. You don't need to wash it because you want the black to merge with the next color. And my next color that I'm going to be picking up is blue. So I have black and blue on my brush right now, and the black is really powerful. So that's why I suggest that you at least wipe it off on your paper towel, because if you don't wipe some of it off, you might not be able to get this gradient in a way that you want. So I'm just picking up blue at this point, and what I want to attempt to do is get this water to get lighter and lighter as it comes down. Again, I'm not washing my brush, I'm just using the paint that's on there, and I want it to kind of merge together and look like it belongs. I am going to be going about 1/4 of the way down my canvas. So if this is halfway, I want to go about another 1/4 of the way down my canvas. I've used blue for a little while now. Now I'm going to introduce a little bit of that phthalo green. And again, phthalo green is a pretty powerful color. So know that it might be pretty vibrant when you start, but as soon as you start to introduce white, which is what I'm doing now, this is going to get it to soften right up. And for me, this is a little bit green for me, so I'm going to add some more blue to it. And you can totally adjust these colors as you see fit. You might want it to be really bright and beautiful and light and look like there's a ton of sunshine on it. But know that we will be modifying or adding another layer to this water later. So know that it doesn't have to be 100% perfect at this point, because we're going to be adding waves and sand is going to be introduced to the edge of it. So just know that you are going to have another opportunity to do some more stuff to this. So once you've got it pretty visually like you had imagined it to be, lighter or darker or bluer or greener, the greener it is, the more it's going to look like it's a tropical water. The bluer it looks, the more it's going to look like maybe it's the edge of a lake. But what I'm going to do at this point, now that I've got my water in place is I'm going to wash and dry this brush so we can use it for the next step. So you can get ready for that. All right, so for the next step, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing the beach area. I'm using my bristle brush, and the colors that I'm using are brown, white, blue, and green. And you might use a little black too, but that will be at the tail end and you can decide at that point. But the primary colors I'm going to be using is brown, white, blue, and green. So I'm going to start with white and brown on my brush at the same time. And the way that I'm going to be creating this beach to kind of look like sand is I'm just going to be doing these quick, almost crisscross motions. I start with brown and white on my brush, and then the next time I picked up just white. So that way it's going to force me to have some light areas and some dark areas. I just picked up brown on that time. And I'm at this point almost alternating what I'm picking up. So it's going to force me to have some light spots and dark spots. And if you don't get this crisscross, you could certainly dot it if you want to. But the idea here is you want to have varying shades of this brown color. So you can have light shades and dark shades. I do want to get the entire area. You can see I'm kind of staying away from the water for the moment. And the reason why I'm doing that is one, I want it to dry for a moment because we just painted it with the other colors and those dark colors. And two, I don't really want to contaminate my beach color yet. I want to wait until I have almost all of my sand on here before I start introducing some of those watercolors. So what I'm going to do is I'm getting this entire area done with my brown and white first, and then I'm going to show you a kind of a quick technique to get this water to look like it's going into the beach, or the beach sand is rolling into the water. So I'm just kind of doing some crisscross dabbing motions here to make sure I have the entire ground or beach area covered. And again, you can get up close to the water line. I'm just checking here to make sure I've got almost all. And your paint's going to be pretty wet, because if you did it similar to the way that I did it, I'm using kind of thick paint. And that way I've got a good almost like textured look to it, like you would have at the beach. But now that I've got this whole area covered with the brown and white, I want to start to merge it together with my water. So if your water area is still wet at this point, you may not even need to pick up any of the blue or green. So I'm going to test it by putting a little bit of white on my brush, and I'm going to start to almost go just left to right, see if this is a little wet, and it is, because I just picked up a little bit of this color here, and you can see I've got some green going on there. And all I'm doing is I'm in essence doing this stroke that I did on here, kind of like a left to right, and I'm crisscrossing some of my beach colors into my water and some of my watercolors into my beach. So that way it makes it look like they're going together. It brings the sand color into the water, and it brings the watercolor into the sand. And once I get this to look like it belongs together, I'll be able to add some little white caps to it. I'm going to do that in a minute, but first I'm going to get this all to kind of look like it belongs together. I just put a little bit more green and blue on my brush because I felt like my water area was getting a little bit dry. So as you can see, I added just a touch more paint to my brush to make sure I've got some good wetness in order to bring these two areas together. And you could certainly bring one area down a little bit further. If you wanted this to almost look like it was like a little hill or something, you could bring one side of this water down a little bit further. I'm also going to put a little bit of this color down in this bottom corner. That way it makes it look like maybe this is just like a little inlet of the beach area. And once I've got these colors to intermingle with one another, and I'm pretty happy with the way that they're blending, now I get to just put a couple of little final touches on this. And this is where I can decide if I want like lots of white caps in the water to make it look like there's waves rolling in, or to make it, you can have it really nice and smooth, like it's very calm water. I'm going to just add some white to my brush at this point. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of almost push it into that water a little bit left to right. And this is adding almost those little rolling white caps coming into the beach. You could do it at a diagonal, you could do it straight across, whatever you imagine this water to be, either rough or smooth or calm. You can certainly create that picturesque, secluded little beach that this is to me. You can certainly create it on your own as well. And right now I'm just kind of adding a little bit more of the brown in through here. I'm going to add a little bit more darkness down in this bottom left hand corner to make it look like it's a little bit more secluded. And this is the corner, if I wanted to add a touch of black to almost emulate some of this darkness up here, I could certainly introduce black down into this corner. But I'm pretty happy with this at this point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be washing and drying this big brush in preparation for the next step. Okay, so for the next step we're going to be doing the clouds in the sky. I'm going to be using my bristle brush, and the colors that I'm going to be using are white and brown. So for me, I don't like my clouds to look like cotton balls, you know, those big poofy, just like circles across the sky. I like mine to kind of just be light and fluffy and just kind of floating by. So that's why I don't just use white. I'm going to use white with a little bit of brown. So I also don't use a lot of paint on my brush. So I'm going to put a touch of white and a touch of brown to start these clouds. And what I like to do is I'm going to kind of do like a little bit of a circular motion, and then I almost like fade it out at the bottom so it's got less paint at the bottom. You can make these look similar throughout, or you can have like a bigger one going through the middle if you wanted to. As you can see, I'm going through a light area behind, so I'm going to add a touch more brown, and you'll understand in a minute why I'm adding this brown to it. But I like to keep my edges nice and soft. So as my paint is running out, or I feel like my paint is getting dry on my brush, I almost rub those edges out so I have nice soft edges. And again, you can have a ton of clouds. You could have these like little rolling clouds down through the horizon line. You can really imagine them to be whatever way you want. They could be just super soft, almost non-detected. They could just be streaks throughout the sky. They could be these big, huge, poofy white ones if you want. But again, for me, I don't want mine to look like cotton balls, so that's why I tend to rub them out on the edges and stuff. So once I've got this thin layer and I've got whites and browns, now I'm going to touch my brush in just white, and this is where I can fluff out or make brighter some of these areas of the cloud. And this is going to give it a little bit more dimension. It's going to make it look a little bit more real. So you have like those bright spots and those darker spots. I just put a little bit more white on my brush here, and you can see I'm not painting the entire cloud with the white. I'm just kind of being selective as to where I want those bright spots to be. And this is, again, it's just going to make it look a little bit more natural, and it's going to have a little bit more dimension to it. You could certainly add more colors to these clouds or more layers. But in an interest of time, I'm just kind of using two, and this is a great beginner level way to start these clouds. You can, as you paint more clouds, they're actually kind of a difficult thing to paint. So as you get more used to it, you can certainly experiment more with colors. Like if you're doing a sunset, you can add some beautiful reds and yellows and, you know, those other purples and other colors that you see in the sky. But as you can see, I'm just kind of keeping these a little bit on the more simpler side. I'm adding a touch more brown to this one because I feel like it's a little bit too one-dimensional or two-dimensional. So to me, this looks pretty good. And once you've conquered your clouds, what we're going to be doing is we're going to switch brushes to that small brush. So you can put the big brush away and get that small round brush out and get ready for the next step. All right, so the next step that we're doing is we're going to do the first step of the boat. I'm going to be using my number 6 round brush. I'm going to be using black paint only. And one of my tips to keeping your brush nice and pointy is just spin it in your paint on the side of your palette. That will keep it nice and pointy. And where I'm going to start the boat is in the back side of it. So to figure out where I'm going to start, I'm going to kind of look where my center point is of my canvas. I'm going to find where my beach and my water meet. I'm going to come up about an inch or so, and then I'm going to go over to the left a couple of inches. And then I'm going to make myself a horizontal line that's about an inch and a half wide. And then I'm going to make myself a vertical line from this left corner, and this is going to be about 2 inches down into my beachy area. So I'm not using a ruler, I'm just kind of guessing what this, somewhere around the 2-inch mark. And then the next line that I'm going to be making is I'm going to go over to the right of this one, maybe about 3 inches or so, and I'm going to go up a little bit, maybe about 1/2 inch. And that's where I'm going to start this. We're going to be doing another vertical line, but I want it to come down way past here. So I want this to come down maybe 2 or 3 inches past wherever this is. So I'm going to just take this starting point that I have here, and I'm going to draw myself a vertical line that's going to come down past here about 2 or 3 inches. Okay? So once we have that line, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect this top mark here with this back corner here using a swooping motion. So you can start here or here, whatever is more comfortable for you. I like to start here because I'm going to bring it down. I want it to swoop down farther than this point here. So I'm going to start up here. I'm going to bring it really far down, and then I'm going to start swooping right about maybe almost where this is or a little bit higher to it. And then I'm going to swoop this all the way up to this corner here. Once I have that line, I'm going to then connect this top right corner into here, and I'm going to use a pretty similar angle. It doesn't have to be exactly, but I'm going to connect this right into there. Once I have that solidified, then I want to make, I've got to create the corner, the other front corner of the boat. So I'm going to just take this line from here and go down at a similar angle as I did on the left side. And then at some point, I'm just going to scoop it up just a little bit in that corner. Now what I have to do is I'm going to connect this corner here to this back corner here. And this is going to be a long scooping motion. I'm going to touch this on my way by. So here I go. I'm going to bring this all the way down here. I'm going to scoop it past here, and then I'm going to ride this all the way up to here. And now, almost ran out of paint there. So now I have pretty good shape to my boat. And of course you could modify it if you need to, if you feel like you need to work out any of these kinks in this front area. You could certainly just bump it down a little bit more if you wanted to. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to color in this part right here just straight black. So I just put black on my brush, and I'm going to color this whole part in with black paint. And then when you're all done with this step, we're going to switch back to that big brush. So we're gonna give this outline a few minutes to dry. While it's drying, we're gonna go on and do another step. So you're gonna put the small brush away in your water cup, and you'll take out your big brush in preparation for the next step. All right, so the next step that we're doing is we're gonna be creating a little island over here. I'm gonna be using my bristle brush, and the colors that I'm gonna use are all of the colors except for blue. So I'm using yellow, black, brown, white, and green. And the way that I'm gonna do this is I want my island to have some sunshine on the top. I want it to be bright on the top and dark at the bottom. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start with brown and green on my brush. Now this green is a real unnatural green. So using the brown with it will neutralize it a little bit, but you are definitely gonna wanna use some yellow in it as well. But what I'm doing is I'm just using the green and brown to get the shape of my trees going, but you can see that you can see through these and you can see my horizon line. You can have this island as big or as small as you want. You could have palm trees on it, you could have pine trees, you could have autumn trees. These are really, this is really a section that you get to modify and make whatever way you can imagine it to be. But what I do is I bring it about an inch below my horizon line. And again, you can get these to be nice and tall. I definitely like mine to have different shapes to them and different heights. I don't like it to look like my landscaper just came and trimmed them all up nice and neatly. So I get the edges to be a little bit rough. And then once I have the shape that I want, now I'm gonna start to add my highlight on the edges. So I didn't wash and dry my brush. I'm just gonna pick up a little bit of white and yellow. So yellow and white go on my brush at the same time. And this is where I'm just dotting in some bright highlights at the tops of my tree. And this yellow is also gonna neutralize that unnatural green that we're using. So I'm just adding a little bit of highlights over here, and then you can certainly, if you wanted to have some smaller trees, you can certainly add a little imaginary tree line in the front. And then once I get the highlight on there, I can start to put my shadow down at the bottom. So I just wiped my brush off on my paper towel, and I'm gonna put black paint on my brush. And I want the bottom of this island to be nice and dark. So I've put black on my brush, and this is gonna give me a nice dimension to it and nice and shadowed down at the bottom. And now I wanna do my white caps in my water to make it really look like an island. So I'm quickly washing and drying my brush, and I'm gonna put just a little bit of white paint on the tip of my brush. And what I do is I'm going to, let me just get this in control here. I'm gonna just almost like lightly dab it, going left to right. And this is just gonna give me the representation of white caps. It doesn't have to be anything super powerful. If you want it to be, you certainly can. You can have waves just crashing into this little island if you want to, or you can have it pretty subtle. If you feel like you've gone too far on the white caps, you can always bring back some blue or bring back some green or black or whatever you want to get it to be more subtle. And I think that's almost, I think I might just add just a touch more highlight on this front area just to make it look like it's not stopping at the horizon line. And then we are going to use this brush for the next step, but I do want you to wash it and dry it. So after you've got this little island as bright as you'd like it to be, you can wash and dry the big brush for the next step. Okay, so the next step that we're going to be doing is we're doing the shadow underneath the boat. We're going to be using brown and black paint. I'm going to be using my bristle brush. And the trick here is less is more. You don't want to use a lot of paint in this step because I want to be able to control this shadow, and I want it to look like it's like the boat is just kind of like sunken, maybe not sunken into the sand, but definitely maybe been there a little while. So what I'm doing is I'm just hardly touching my brush in the black and the brown. And what I like to do, I'm not going to do it at a diagonal like the boat is. I'm going to do it left to right. So what I'm doing is I'm going to put a little bit of this paint right at the bottom of the boat. And then if you feel like you have too much paint, like I feel like I have too much paint on my brush right now, I'm going to wipe it on my paper towel. And then what I'm going to do is I'm using what I refer to as like a dry brush technique. And I'm just wiggling my brush left to right and pulling some of that wet paint from the edge into my sand. So just left to right, just a little like a dry brush technique, and you can see it's very uneven around the edges, and that's exactly how I want it to be. And then I'm going to take a little bit of this color, maybe I add a touch more onto my brush, and maybe I put a little bit of a shadow over here in the sand. And it's okay if you touch the boat like I just did. I want it to look like it belongs with it. Maybe just a touch more black in through here. And again, I'm using such little paint that I actually needed to go get more. But you can have fun with this. If you feel, again, like you've gone too far with it, you can certainly just let it dry for a minute, and then you can bring back some of your sand color on top of it. And then the next step that we're going to do is with your small brush. So you can put your big brush away in your water cup and get out your small brush in preparation for the next step. All right, so for the next step that we're doing, we are putting the color on the boat. I'm going to be using primarily white, blue, and green. You could have a yellow boat. If you want to pull in some red, you can have a red boat. You can certainly make this very customizable for yourself. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to just start by using white and blue on my brush, and I'm just going left to right. I want to use a good amount of paint, so that way I'm in essence going to be hiding anything that's underneath it. You can go all the way to the edge. If you use almost like a curve in your paint stroke, that's going to give the illusion that the boat is round. I just added a little bit of the green to my brush, and if you need to modify your shape at the bottom, you can certainly do so like I just did. I'm going to bring it right up close to this this center mark that we have going on here, and I like mine to almost be like striped looking, like it's going to be a little bit darker at the bottom, and it's going to have a little bit of a highlight where that boat curves along the front edge. So what I'm doing is I'm making it a little bit darker back here. I'll make it a little bit darker at the bottom of the boat, and then as I build these stripes, so to speak, I'll be getting them lighter and lighter in through here. I think I might actually also add a little bit of a decorative stripe down the boat. So what I'm going to do is once I get this first little pass of colors on through here, I'm just picking up a touch of black, and for me, I'm just going to kind of make myself a little decorative stripe. And again, this is just something that is, if you want to visually break up the side of the boat or give it more of a round shape illusion, you can certainly do that. Now I'm just going to go and color that other side of the boat. So again, I'm just starting with a little bit blue and white. You can go right up to your outline. You can even overlap that outline a little bit so it doesn't look so, no pun, outliney. If you want to make it look a little bit more natural, you just kind of almost leave a little hint of that outline in through there. And you can see I'm still using this like curved brush stroke in through here, and this way it's giving the viewer the illusion that this boat is round, and that it's got that curved front to it. I am going to add my little decorative stripe over on the other side, And again, you can get this as fancy as you want. You could put polka dots, you could put, I don't know, butterflies on the back of it, which we did once. So you could really get it as decorative as you want. But I'm closing in on finishing the colored part of this, but my boat's not done. I just got to add a little bit of a highlight to the back of it to give this a not flat shape. So I just wiped my brush on my paper towel and dipping it in white paint, and I want this back to look like it's got a little bit of a highlight. So all I'm doing is I'm putting white paint on that back edge. I put a little bit of white paint down the side here, like this is maybe the railing part or the top edge of it. You could put a touch of white down here. You could put a touch of white down this front center stripe. And this again is just all about kind of customizing it to whatever is visually appealing to you. And then, you know, there's just touch-ups if you want to go back and make this color brighter or darker, or if I wanted to add more highlights along this curved part. This is all, again, a visual preference. You can make it light or dark or colorful, whatever you imagine this little boat to be. I suppose you could put oars coming out or resting upon the side of it. So just know that that boat can be, you know, maybe it's something that you and your dad went fishing in when you were a kid or something. So just make it your own, make it visually pleasing to you. And then after you get the whole boat colored and you're enjoying the look of it, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing the final step to any good painting, which will be done with that small brush. So once you get your highlights on and your colors on, you're going to take that small brush, wash it and dry it in preparation for the last step. All right, so last step to any great painting that you're going to create is signing it. So I take my small brush. I usually sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right corner. This particular painting, I'm going to be using black paint in my small brush. And you can sign your initials, you can sign your first name, you can sign the date, whatever makes you happy is fine by me. This is your own personal identifying mark. So that's going to be how I sign mine. And that is the conclusion of this painting. So I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you love your painting, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.